So now back bonding. Back bonding is essentially a tale of two atoms which are bonded to each other, right? So it is a tale of two atoms which are bonded to each other. One of them has two non-bonding electrons or a non-bonding electron pair, and the other one has a vacant orbital, right? So it's basically this in the simplest possible way, and everything we will go and study from here on onwards, right, will be built on top of this. So let's see, right? What do we need? Atoms having non-bonding electron pair. Read it again. Atom having non-bonding electron pair. All right. And what do we need? We need read it backwards, right? So read it backward, read this part first. Another bonded atom. What do we need? Another bonded atom with unfilled orbital, right? So now read it straight away, right? So what do we need? We need an unfilled orbital of another bonded atom, right? Okay, cool. So this is what we have. Now let's try to see it in demonstration. So let's see. This is what we have, right? Boron. We know boron is essentially what? 2s. 2s to 2p1. This is what we have, right? Boron, aluminium, gallium, indium, thallium. So yeah, this is what we have. Now boron, right, even after excitation will be having what? Something like this. Correct, no? So it can form essentially what? 3 covalent bonds. That is what it is forming, right? So forget about this thing. Forget about this thing, right? What is it forming, right? 3 bonds with fluorine. Now fluorine is there sitting like, you know what, dude? I have a lot of lone pairs on me, right? And in the last session only we studied, right? Because of its small size, right? All the repulsion angles and everything we studied. So I have a lot of lone pairs on me. They are also attracting a lot of electron hungry predators. Not why not I coordinate my lone pair to your empty orbital, right? So the fluorine says this to boron. Why don't I coordinate my lone pair to your empty orbital? So now the boron is like, okay, yeah, you can do that because something like this happened here. Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's why, right? Fluorine with a positive charge on top of it. That's why unstable, right? That's why the question that we were having. Right? So now the fluorine, this fluorine over here, this fluorine, like, hey, boron, will you make a bond with me? Right? And you can ask the fluorine to take its electron pairs away again. So we're like, yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind forming a bond with you because ultimately, if you are giving me an electron, it's not like his electrons are yellow and your electrons are black and his electrons are brown. It's not like that, right? There is no race going on here, right? There's no label on the electrons. Electrons are the same to me. So yeah, this thing particular over here happens, and this is what we have, and this is what we have. Yeah, all right, cool. Now the third fluorine is like, hey boron, will you form a bond with me? Right? So yeah, this turns out, and we see that all of these individual possibilities are very similar in energy. But turns out when we actually refer to the bond lengths, right, and electron densities, and the positive charges and the negative charges in this molecule, the actual structure turned out to be like this, right? So what did we conclude? We can easily ascertain that those are the resonating structures. This is the resonance hybrid of the overall phenomena that is going on. But what is the individual phenomena going here? Back bonding, right? Boron and fluorine are already bonded to each other. Fluorine has lone pair, boron has empty orbital, right? Okay, cool. Now you need to remember, right? It is basically a kind of coordinate pi bonding, right? And it imparts partial double bond character, right? Partial pi character because, right, double bond character can also be said. Now you need to also remember, right, when I say that you need between A and B, you need a lone pair here and you need a vacant orbital here, I do not necessarily mean that B needs to have incomplete octet. It's quite possible that B belongs to some period, like third period, for example, which has empty, vacant 3D orbitals. They can also be the acceptor of the coordinate bond, right? The pi coordinate bond, right? And that's going to play a major role here, right? So let's try to differentiate the two first. Coordinate bond can be of a sigma type, can be of a pi type, right? This is what we are studying here, right? Okay, cool. Now, the stability of pi bond is inversely proportional to the size of the orbitals. If you have larger and larger orbitals, the electron density, if you have larger and larger orbitals, the electron density is diffused, because ultimately you have only 2 electrons in an orbital which have now a larger space to move around. So the overlap turns out to be weaker because of the reduced electron density in larger orbitals. And yeah, because of that, we can say that the stability is inversely proportional to size of orbitals. Larger is the orbital, weaker is the pi bond, right? Smaller is the orbital, stronger is the pi bond. Now, by that logic, if we look at this tent here, we can easily see that 2p pi is the greatest, right? Right? And we can also say that why 2p pi 3p pi is more than 3p pi 3p pi. Trust me, you don't need to go to 4p pi and 5d and 4d and stuff like that, right? We need to stay here. This is something, right, we'll cover in when we go to p block. This I'm not covering right now. We'll cover this in p block when we go to it, right? When we go much more deep into the atomic level and how all of these parameters are functioning, right? When we combine periodic table plus chemical bonding for p block and individual groups within that, and we try to study, right, each and every group and the elements within in detail, this we'll cover then, right? For now, just remember that this order turns up over here. Cool. So yeah, this is what we have. Now, one more thing. If you have a lone pair donator and if you have one with an empty orbital, whether it is d as well, right, like phosphorus, right, but it has lone pairs on top of it. Let's say you have chlorine, like chlorine now has d, but it also have a lot of lone pairs on top of it. No. So what is going to happen, right? If I have an empty d orbital, but I also have lone pairs of my own, and you are telling me, dude, help me out, accept my coordinate bond, right? Accept my lone pairs as a coordinate bond. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be repulsion, right? That's what I'm trying to say. It's not going to be spreading of the electron density because of my lone pair repulsion. Electron density is going to be significantly or your end only. And that we called as, right, the extent of back bonding decreases if the number of lone pair on the atom having vacant orbital increase. More the lone pairs, right, extent of overlap decreases. So if you go from left to right in a period, the number of lone pair increase. So the back bonding extent decreases when they are functioning as the acceptors. Understand? Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, this is what we have. Now let's consider which of the following molecules has the shortest bond length. Well, both of them have boron and fluorine. So why are we discussing the bond length? Because here you remember we are going to have what? Double bond character, right? So yeah, this is what we have. Boron has a vacant orbital, right? In this, boron does not have the vacant orbital. Back bonding scope is there because fluorine is there and the vacant orbital is there. Fluorine is there in this one, but the boron vacant orbital is not there. So extend back bonding cannot happen. And so this one here gets a partial double bond character. This one here does not. So the bond length here is smaller and the bond length here is larger. Right? Cool.
For more videos and live lectures on the JEE, click on the subscribe button now.